So the issue that we are concerned here is that there's no demonstrated need to build the facility given the alternative supplies.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
thank you, Senator. Actually, I think that I'm going to ask the policy people to do an outreach to, I think, the PUC or some organization to get solid kind of idea numbers as to that capacity and what it means to Rhode Island. I appreciate your efforts in that regard, but we actually have a utilities commission, and maybe we can ask them what their thinking is in terms of the capacity.
Senator, if I might just, I'm sorry to interject, but the state of Massachusetts has filed an official letter objecting to the company's claims about the need. The state of Massachusetts has, and the Department of Energy Resources.
Thank you. We'll obtain that also.
Yes.
Senator Miller.
Yes. I think I'm correct in my understanding of what happens in Narragansett Bay, that the LNG terminal in Providence is actually supplied by truck. Is that right? So that there's no current LNG traffic in Narragansett Bay.
There's actually, in Providence Harbor, there's a liquefied propane terminal.
Yeah.
And that is served by ship. And we have 4 to 6 vessels, I'm told, per year, where they actually, I see them coming right by our building, our education center. And they are surrounded by the same Coast Guard security zone that these LNG tankers would be surrounded by.
Okay. I don't know if you can speculate on this, but you made it very clear earlier on that the proposal is for an in-bay terminal. Has there been any proposals as an alternative to service the same location with a truly offshore terminal? And would your objection be the same?
I have met with the CEO of Hess LNG, Gordon Shearer. We have talked about the potential I've asked him about the potential of locating the actual terminal itself, not the storage facility, which they intend to store the natural gas in Fall River on their property, of the potential for locating a terminal in federal waters, for example, off the coast of Rhode Island. And their objection to that is, predictably, is about money. The pipeline would have to be significantly longer. And as Grover mentioned, they're proposing a cryogenically cooled pipeline system, which is very, very expensive and has never been used before under the seafloor. It has been used above land in the Middle East, but not in the seafloor. And so it would represent if the terminal were not a liquefied offloading facility, then it would and has been done before in many other parts of the country. Their particular approach, which is to deliver liquid to the storage facility, makes it unique and makes the pipeline issues much more complex and expensive and unproven, for that matter.
But the terminal in Gloucester is a terminal in which the gas is gasified at the buoy site.
That's correct, yeah.
So somebody could, whether it be Hess or others, could propose a similar, if you wanted to deliver to some place on there, that you would be located within Narragansett Bay, you could use the same technology to have offload somewhere outside of Narragansett
Yeah,
Bay.
absolutely, yeah.
And your objection would be different. It might still be
Our objection would be that you would have, we'd evaluate it, of course, under the same rules that we evaluate, same criteria we evaluate every project, but you would clearly not have the same degree of use conflicts and environmental impacts that you have here.
The reason I ask that is because I understand one of the advantages potentially of supplying gas into Narragansett Bay is Brayton Point currently burns coal. And any environmentalist who's been around long enough, the first thing you want to see is the elimination of the burning of coal. So if that's a potential by delivering more gas to the area, whether through this method or another method, would seem to be an advantage to those who are concerned about burning coal.
And we think natural gas has an important role in energy, particularly electricity generation. And that's a great point. And I want to make it clear, Save the Bay advocated for the conversion of the Manchester Street station from coal to natural gas. We think natural gas is a much cleaner fuel. It is. It's not perfect. And I would also point out that the liquefaction process and the regasification process is very energy intensive itself. So the ideal solution would be to deliver gas, not liquid. And it could be delivered in fact, one of the 4 or 5 generators at Brayton Point today burns natural gas. So it is tied into a pipeline system, and that may be ultimately where some of the Boston gas is headed.
I have one other brief question. You seem to have enough expertise to possibly know about this, and I don't. Was there any compressed or other, rather than a conventional natural gas line involved in the disaster in Middletown, Connecticut?
I know they were purging natural gas lines into the factory. In the purging process, from what I read in the paper, there was some sort of malfunction. There was no liquefied natural gas in that particular accident, to my knowledge.
Thank you, Senator. Senator De Palma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Jonathan, thank you for being here. Following up on Senator Miller's comment with regards to the pipe in a pipe. With regards to I'm trying to look at this objectively. Dredging happens, I don't want to say every day. It doesn't happen every day in Rhode Island, but I'm sure it's happening every day somewhere. Dredging occurs, right? And it's working through and calculating the risks associated with dredging, doing the analysis of what the dredging is going to occur, and as you do it, some testing. So while it concerns me, I think it's one of those things that has to be addressed and looked at very closely, like you're doing and other groups are doing. More importantly, though, the pipe in the pipe that's never been done before to this degree with the actually LNG in the pipe. Are you aware of any seismic analysis that's been done of that area, of the pipe underground? And it's going to be buried with whatever sediment around it, and based on their expected leakage areas, they'll be able to address leaking from one pipe, from the first pipe to the second pipe. Are you aware of any seismic analysis that's been done of those pipes in a pipe potentially, and how that might affect the pipeline?
Sure. It's a great question. We are aware of seismic work that's been done in Mount Hope Bay. We are told that there is a fault zone in Mount Hope Bay and that the pipeline path would cross the fault line. Geology certainly is not an area of expertise of ours, and I would add that while I mentioned our 3 principal objections to the project, there are certainly other reasons to be concerned about the project beyond the 3 that I mentioned: public use, environmental impacts, and alternatives being evident. And the geology of Mount Hope Bay and the potential risk from fault from a earthquake is there, we understand.
So just a fault, do you have any recommendation of who would have that knowledge or expertise with regarding the fault zone in that area?
I can get you that information. The city of Fall River has, as you probably all know, I think, has been opposed to this project for some period of time, and they have, there is one research geologist, a Massachusetts resident, who has provided some geology fault research to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Metz, final
Yes.
for this witness.
I noted the environmental concerns that you raised with the shallow water and the spawning grounds and the like. And I would appreciate, do you have any information on the environmental impacts on other projects in other areas? And if you do, if you could share that with the committee, I'd appreciate it.
Other LNG terminal projects outside
Yes,
of?
similar products elsewhere, and what has been the environmental impact in those areas?
There are very few, other than the Houston area, the Houston Ship Channel, there are very few liquefied natural gas terminals. However, FERC is now considering and has actually permitted, I think, 10 new LNG terminals over the last several years, and is considering, I think, 13 additional LNG terminals around the country. Of the terminals permitted or that are being evaluated, there are only 2 that I'm aware of that violate the standards of the International Trade Organization that represents the LNG industry. Grover Fugate mentioned, responding to a question about what our federal delegation might suggest to our federal agencies consider, FERC does not follow this International Trade Organization's best practices as it relates to terminal siting.